This is Crestwood, not some inner-city school. A white parent sneers as Nia Carter steps onto the pristine lawn of Crestwood Elementary to pick up her daughter Zoe. In a simple white t-shirt, her shoulder-length wavy hair framing her striking black features, Nia faces piercing stares, her skin color marking her as an outsider. Unseen by them, she's an environmental consultant, driving sustainable change. Her husband James, a biotech CEO revolutionizing industries. What unfolds when snap judgments meet undeniable truth? Can Nia shatter their prejudice? Subscribe now and join our community. Tell us where you're watching from and when. Dive into a tale of courage and revelation. You won't believe the twist that flips this story upside down. The late afternoon sun hung low over Seattle's affluent suburbs bathing the manicured lawns of Crestwood Elementary in a golden haze. Nia Carter eased her navy SUV into the crowded parking lot, her fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel to the fading notes of a jazz tune. At 36, she carried herself with a quiet grace. Her shoulder-length hair loosely waved, catching the light as it framed her deep, ebony skin. Her simple white t-shirt and jeans clung comfortably to her frame, a testament to her practical nature, rather than the wealth that now defined her family's life. Today was special. Her daughter, Zoe's first week at Crestwood, and Nia had carved out time from her environmental consulting work to pick her up in person, to see her bright smile after days of adjusting to a new world. The move from Atlanta had been a whirlwind. Her husband James had accepted a CEO position at a biotech firm reshaping medical technology, thrusting them into a city of sleek skyscrapers and exclusive enclaves. Zoe, their 6-year-old, with her warm brown skin and curls that bounced with every step, was the bridge between Nia's fierce resilience and James' steady calm. Crestwood, an elite private school, promised the best for Zoe: a rigorous curriculum, sprawling facilities, and a reputation that drew Seattle's elite. Yet, as Nia stepped out of the SUV, the air felt heavier than she'd expected, laced with an undercurrent of scrutiny she knew too well. The school loomed ahead, its red brick facade adorned with ivy, its tall windows reflecting the polished SUVs and sedans that lined the lot. Parents gathered near the pickup area, their voices a low hum of privileged ease. Women in tailored blazers and men in crisp golf shirts clustered in groups, their laughter sharp and exclusive. Nia's eyes scanned the crowd, noting the absence of anyone who looked like her. In Atlanta, Zoe's old school had been a mosaic of faces, black, Latino, Asian, white, where Nia felt at home. Here, the sea of pale faces turned toward her, their glances fleeting but pointed as if her presence disrupted an unspoken order. She adjusted her purse, her fingers brushing the worn leather, and walked toward the pickup line. The grass was impossibly green, each blade seeming to mock her worn sneakers. A memory flickered Zoe's first day, her tiny hand gripping Nia as they toured Crestwood's gleaming halls. "Mommy, will they like me?" Zoe had whispered, her eyes wide. Nia had knelt, smoothing her curls. "They'll love you, baby. Just be your sparkly self." Now, standing among strangers, Nia wondered if she'd promised too much. A woman in a cream cashmere sweater glanced over her, lips pursing as she took in Nia's outfit. Another, clutching a designer handbag, leaned toward her friend, her whisper carrying just far enough. New nanny. Maybe Nia's jaw tightened, but she kept her smile a shield, honed by years of navigating spaces where her skin made her a question mark. She'd faced this before: store clerks trailing her neighbors, eyeing her with suspicion. But today, it stung deeper. This was Zoe's world now, and Nia wanted it to feel safe. She reached the pickup area, a shaded spot where parents stood in a loose line, their eyes flicking between their phones and the school doors. A tall woman with a sleek bob, her blazer screaming corporate power, stood at the front, Her posture commanding Nia caught her eye and nodded politely. The woman's gaze swept over her, lingering on the white t-shirt, then turned away. Her expression unreadable but cold. Nia's stomach twisted a familiar ache. She was no stranger to being sized up, but here in this pristine bubble, it felt like a spotlight. First time here. A man's voice broke her thoughts. He was older. His polo shirt emblazed with a yacht club logo. His smile. More curious than kind. You look new. Nia nodded, keeping her tone warm. Yes, my daughter started this week. I'm picking her up today. Nice, he said, but his eyes darted to her jeans, then back to the crowd as if dismissing her. This place is top tier. Not everyone gets in. The words hung heavy, a challenge disguised as small talk. Nia's fingers curled, but she held her ground, her smile unwavering. The school door swung open and children spilled out their backpacks, bouncing. Nia's heart lifted as she scanned for Zoe. The other parents straightened, their voices rising in practiced cheer. There's my Liam. One called Chloe over here. Nia waited, her eyes locked on the doorway, ignoring the whispers that seemed to grow louder, sharper. She caught fragments. Doesn't look like she belongs. Probably a scholarship case. Each one a pinprick, but she refused to flinch. Then she saw her Zoe bounded out, her pink backpack swinging, her curls catching the sunlight. Mommy, she shouted, her voice a melody that drowned out the noise. Nia knelt, arms open, as Zoe ran into her, embrace her small body, warm and solid. You're here. Zoe beamed, her eyes sparkling. Nia hugged her tightly, the world shrinking to just them always, baby. Nia whispered, brushing a curl from Zoe's face. For a moment, the stares, the whispers, the weight of being the only black woman in this pristine space faded. Zoe was her anchor, her reason for enduring. But as Nia stood, Zoe's hand in hers, she felt the eyes again, colder now, more brazen. The woman in the blazer turned, her lips parting, as if to speak, her expression a mix of curiosity, disdain. Nia straightened, her heart thudding. She wanted to scoop Zoe up and leave to shield her from this world of polished surfaces and hidden barbs. But Zoe, they deserved this school, its opportunities, its promise. And Nia deserved to be here, to stand as Zoe's mother without apology. She squeezed Zoe's hand, her resolve hardening. Whatever lay ahead in this pickup line, Nia would face it, not just for herself, but for the little girl, whose sparkly self deserved to shine. The air at Crestwood Elementary's pickup area grew taut. The late afternoon sun doing little to warm the chill of scrutiny that settled over Nia Carter. She stood with Zoe's small hand clasped in hers. The 6-year-old's chatter about her new classroom, a fleeting shield, against the weight of eyes boring into her. Nia's white t-shirt felt suddenly too thin. Her shoulder-length wavy hair, too casual, under the gaze of parents whose designer outfits screamed wealth and belonging. The whispers from the raced, dead-eyed crowd sharp, as thorns had quieted when Zoe ran to her. But now they crept back, bolder, as if Nia's motherhood was a puzzle they refused to solve. At the front of the line, the woman in the tailored blazer, Karen Mitchell, as Nia would later learn, turned fully toward her. Her sleek bob framed a face etched with authority, her eyes narrowing as they swept over Nia's jeans. Excuse me. Karen said, her voice smooth but laced with condescension. Are you sure you're in the right place? This is the parent pickup for Crestwood students. The words landed like a slap, their implication clear. Nia, with her dark skin and unpolished attire, didn't belong. Nia's smile tightened, but she kept her tone. Even a skill honed from angry years of deflecting such jabs. I'm here for my daughter, Zoe Carter. She's in first grade. Zoe, oblivious to the tension, swung Nia's hand, humming softly about a glitter art project. Karen's eyebrows arched, her skepticism Undisguised Zoe Carter, she repeated as if testing the name I don't all recall. Seeing you at the PTA welcome event. Are you new to the area? The question was a probe, a way to place Nia in a box labeled outsider. We just moved. Here, Nia replied, her warmth unwavering despite the knot forming in her chest. Zoe started this week. She wanted to keep this civil for Zoe's sake, but the air felt charged like the moment before a storm breaks. Before Karen could press. Further, a man approached his golf shirt, emblazed with a country club logo, Greg. Larson, his name tag from a recent school event, still pinned to his chest, carried the easy swagger of someone accustomed to being heard. Carter, huh? He said, his eyes flicking over Nia with a dismissive smirk. Don't think I've met your husband. At the club. What does he do? The question was less about curiosity and more about establishing hierarchy. As if Nia's worth hinged on her answer. He's in biotech. Nia said, her voice steady. We moved for his work. She left it at that, unwilling to offer more. To a man whose smile didn't reach his eyes. Greg exchanged a glance with Karen, his lips curling. Biotech. Interesting. Well, Crestwood's a special place. Not everyone fits right in. It's about maintaining a certain community standard. The word standard hung heavy. A code for wealth, whiteness, and conformity. Nia's fingers tightened around Zoe's hand. The sting of his words, familiar yet raw. She'd faced this in boardrooms, in stores, in neighborhoods, assumptions that her skin marked her as less. But here was Zoe watching it cut. Deeper. I'm just here to pick up my daughter, she said, her tone firm. A quiet refusal to be diminished. Karen leaned toward Greg, her voice loud enough to carry. It's great they're diversifying, but you think they'd ensure families align with the school's values. A few parents nearby nodded, their eyes darting to Nia, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled disdain. The crowds. Approval emboldened. Karen, her posture straightening as if she spoke for them all. Zoe tugged at Nia's hand, her voice bright. Mommy can. We get ice cream after. Nia knelt, forcing a smile. Maybe, baby. Let's get you home first. Zoe's innocence was a lifeline, pulling Nia back from the edge of anger. But the moment shattered as Miss Ellison, the pickup coordinator, approached her clipboard, clutched like a shield. Her gray suit was impeccable, her expression stern. Ma'am, she said, her eyes locked on Nia. Can I see some ID? We have strict protocols for student release and I don't recognize you. Nia blinked the request, jarring. Other parents were ushering their children away without so much as a glance from the staff. Of course, she said, reaching into her purse for her driver's license. I'm Zoe's mother, Nia Carter. She handed over the ID, her heart thudding as Miss Ellison studied it. With exaggerated care, her lips pursed. Fine, Miss Ellison said at last, returning the ID. But next time, ensure you're on the approved pickup list. We can't just let anyone walk off with a student. The word anyone was a barb, implying Nia was a risk. Her motherhood suspect, Nia's cheeks burned, not from shame, but from the injustice of it all. I submitted all the paperwork last week, she said, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her chest. My husband and I are both listed. Karen, still hovering, chimed in with a patronizing smile. It's just procedure, I'm sure. We all want to keep the children safe. Her tone suggested otherwise, as if Nia's presence threatened that safety. Greg nodded, his smirk widening. Some people don't get how things work here. It's not personal. His words were a lie, and Nia felt their weight, the collective gaze of the crowd pressing down on her. It feels personal, Nia said, her voice low but resolute. She looked down at Zoe, who was now watching the adults with wide eyes, sensing the shift in the air. Nia's heart, AHD. She wanted to shield her daughter from this, to keep her world bright and untainted. But the truth was staring her down. This school, This pristine enclave saw her as less, and Zoe would feel the ripples. Miss Ellison's eyes narrowed her, clipboard tapping against her thigh. "Ma'am, let's not make this difficult. We have protocols for a reason." The warning was clear. A line drawn in the sand. Nia stood taller, Zoe's hand anchoring her, but the crowd's murmurs grew louder. Their judgment, a rising tide. She wasn't just a mother here. She was a challenge to their world, and they weren't ready to let her pass unchallenged. The pickup area at Crestwood Elementary pulsed with a quiet menace, the late afternoon light casting long shadows that seemed to sharpen the edges of every glance directed at Nia Carter. She stood firm, Zoe's small hand clasped tightly in hers. The 6-year-old's humming now silenced as she sensed the storm brewing around her. Mother Nia's white t-shirt clung to her skin, her shoulder-length wavy hair still framing her face with defiant beauty, but the air was thick with hostility. Murmurs of the gathered parents had morphed into a low predatory hum, and Nia felt their judgment like a physical weight pressing against her. Resolve Karen Mitchell, her tailored blazer, a symbol of her self-appointed authority, stepped closer, her eyes glinting with a mix of disdain and triumph. "Let's be clear," she said, her voice loud enough to draw the attention of every parent in the line. "Crestwood isn't just any school. It's for families who understand its values. Discipline, prestige, community." She paused, her gaze raking over Nia's jeans. "Not everyone belongs here." The words sliced through the air, and Nia's heart thudded, a drumbeat of anger and disbelief. She wanted to shield Zoe, to whisk her away from this venom, but running wasn't an option. Not now, not when her daughter's place in this world was at stake. "I'm Zoe's mother," Nia said, her voice steady, each word deliberate. "I belong here as much as anyone, Greg." Larson, his country club logo gleaming under the sun, let out a derisive chuckle. "Come on, let's not kid ourselves," he said, turning to the crowd as if inviting their approval. "This isn't a charity case school. You can't just walk in looking like that and expect to blend in." He gestured vaguely at Nia's outfit, his smirk inviting laughter from a few parents nearby. Their chuckles were sharp, emboldening the crowd, who now watched with the rapt attention of spectators at a gladiator's arena. Zoe's grip tightened, her small voice trembling. "Mommy, why are they being mean?" Nia knelt briefly, her eyes locking onto her. "Daughters, they're just confused, baby," she whispered, forcing a smile. "Stay close." But inside, Nia's chest burned. This wasn't just about her. It was about Zoe, about the world her daughter would inherit if she didn't stand her ground. As an Ellison, the pickup coordinator seized the moment, her clipboard, now a weapon. As she advanced, "Ma'am," she said, her tone clipped and commanding, "you're holding up the line. Need you to wait while I verify your status with the office. If you can't comply, I'll have to ask you to leave." Her eyes were cold, her authority absolute in this pristine enclave. Nia straightened her resolve, a steel rod in her spine. "I've already shown you my ID," she said, her voice rising just enough to carry. "I submitted all the paperwork last week. My husband and I are on the approved list. I'm not holding up anything. I'm here to pick up my daughter like every other parent." She gestured to the crowd, where parents were collecting their children with casual ease. No questions asked. Karen folded her arms, her smile venomous. "It's about respect for the process," she said. "Some people think they can bypass the rules because of diversity quotas or whatever." The word diversity dripped with mockery, and a ripple of agreement passed through the crowd, their nods fueling the tension. Greg leaned, in his voice a stage whisper meant to be heard. "Maybe you'd be more comfortable at a public school downtown. They're more accommodating to your type." The phrase "your type" landed like a stone, its meaning unmistakable. A few parents gasped, but most remained silent, their complicity a heavier blow than the words themselves. Nia's breath called the raw injustice, igniting a fire in her veins. "My type," she repeated, her voice low, but cutting. "You mean a black woman who dares to be a mother at your precious school, or a parent who doesn't need designer clothes to prove her worth?" Her words hung in the air, a challenge that silenced the crowd for a fleeting moment. But Miss Ellison was undeterred. Her face, a mask of bureaucratic righteousness. "Ma'am, you're causing a disturbance," she said, stepping closer, her clipboard raised like a barrier. "Either wait for verification or leave the premises. We have standards to maintain, and you're not meeting them." "Standards." Nia's voice rose steady but laced with indignation. "You mean judging me because I'm black and not dressed like I stepped out of a catalog? That's your standard?" She looked around, meeting the eyes of the crowd, some of whom shifted uncomfortably, others turning away. "I'm here for my daughter. How is that a disturbance?" Zoe pressed closer, her small body trembling. "Mommy, I want to go home," she whispered, her eyes darting to the adults towering over them. Nia's heart cracked, but she wouldn't crumble. Not now. Not when Zoe needed her to be. Unbreakable. Karen smirked, sensing victory. "If you can't handle the rules, maybe Crestwood isn't for you," she said, her voice carrying to the back of the line. "This school is about excellence, not excuses." Greg nodded, his laughter harsh. "Exactly. Some people need to know their place." The crowd's silence was deafening their inaction. A verdict. Nia felt the weight of it all. Their prejudice, their privilege, their refusal to see her as anything but an intruder. But she stood taller, Zoe's hand anchoring her to purpose. Miss Ellison's patience snapped. "I'm done asking," she said, her voice a whip. "Leave now, or I'll call security." The thread was a blade cutting through the last pretense of civility. Nia's pulse raced, her mind screaming to protect Zoe, to fight for her place, to expose the ugliness staring her down. She opened her mouth to respond, ready to tear through their facade, when a low hum broke the tension, a sleek as silver Tesla, pulling into the lot, its arrival a spark in the gathering storm. The tension at Crestwood Elementary's pickup area crackled like a live wire. The late afternoon sun, now a distant witness to the storm of prejudice enveloping Nia Carter. She stood resolute, Zoe's trembling hand clutched in hers, the 6-year-old's wide eyes darting between her mother and the towering figure of Miss Ellison, whose threat to call security hung in the air like a guillotine. Nia's white t-shirt was a stark contrast to the polished veneer of the parents around her. Her shoulder-length, wavy hair framing a face that burned with defiance and dignity. Karen Mitchell's venomous smirk and Greg Larson's mocking laughter fueled the crowd's complicity. Their silence a deafening endorsement of the injustice unfolding. Nia's heart pounded, her voice ready to shatter their hypocrisy, when a low, sleek hum sliced through the chaos. A silver Tesla Model S, gliding into the lot, its polished surface reflecting the fading light like a beacon. The car's arrival was a seismic shift, drawing every eye. Parents pause mid, whisper, their gazes shifting from Nia to the vehicle, its understated elegance a quiet rebuke to their ostentatious SUVs. The driver's door opened, and James Carter stepped out, his presence a thunderclap in the charged silence. At 38, his fair skin and sharp blue eyes stood in contrast to Zoe's warm brown features, but his love for his family was an unspoken force. His crisp white shirt and tailored jacket exuded a confidence that needed no flourish, his stride purposeful as he crossed the lot. He'd finished a board meeting, early driven by whim to surprise Nia and Zoe at pickup, unaware of the battle awaiting him. Nia's breath caught relief and resolve mingling as James approached. Zoe's face lit up, her small voice breaking the hush. "Daddy," she cried, tugging at Nia's hand, but staying close, sensing the weight of the moment. James's eyes found Nia's, a flicker of concern darkening his features as he registered the scene. His wife cornered the crowd's hostile stares. Miss Ellison's clipboard raised like a shield. "Good afternoon," James said, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made the air tighten. "I'm here for my daughter Zoe." He knelt, briefly scooping Zoe into a quick hug, his smile for her, a fleeting oasis before his gaze hardened, turning to Miss Ellison. "Everything okay, love?" he asked Nia, his tone soft, but laced with steel. "Not exactly," Nia replied, her voice steady, despite the knot in her chest. "They don't seem to think I belong here." Her words were a quiet indictment, and James's jaw tightened, his eyes sweeping the crowd, taking in Karen's faltering smirk and Greg's sudden unease. Miss Ellison, her authority shaken by James's presence, stammered, "Sir, there's been a misunderstanding. We have protocols for student release." "Protocols?" James interrupted, his tone even but unyielding rising. "Just enough to carry protocols that single out my wife, demand her ID, and threaten her with security, while other parents walk away unquestioned." He stepped closer, his hide and quiet power shrinking Miss Ellison's clipboard to a flimsy prop. "James Carter, Zoe's father. I'd like to know what justifies treating my wife like she's an intruder." Karen, sensing her control slip, stepped forward, her voice syrupy with false calm. "It's just a mix-up, I'm sure. We're all protective of our community here." Her smile was a brittle mask crumbling under James's piercing gaze. "Community?" James repeated, his eyes locking onto hers. "My wife, Nia Carter, an environmental consultant who saved millions in resources with her projects. She's a board member for the Seattle Youth Arts Fund. She's Zoe's mother. What part of that doesn't fit your community?" His words were a scalpel cutting through the crowd's pretense, and a murmur rippled through the parents, some shifting uncomfortably. Their complicity exposed Greg. His bravado wavering tried to interject. "Now, let's not make this a race thing. Crestwood's always been welcoming." "Welcoming to whom?" Nia cut in, her voice rising clear and unshakable. "Not to me, when I'm treated like an outsider for no reason other than my skin and my clothes." Zoe pressed closer, and Nia squeezed her hand, grounding herself in her daughter's presence. A young teacher's aide, Sarah, who'd been hovering at the edge of the scene, stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "Mrs. Carter's right," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. She tried to explain she was Zoe's mom, but Miss Ellison demanded ID and wouldn't listen. "I've seen this happen before, and it's not fair." Her words hung in the air, a crack in the facade of Crestwood's perfection. James nodded, his expression softening towards Sarah. "Thank you for speaking up," he said, his voice warm but firm. He turned back to Miss Ellison, whose face had drained of color. "This isn't a misunderstanding," he said, his tone low but devastating. "It's about assumptions you made because of my wife's appearance and skin color. You didn't verify anyone else's ID. You didn't threaten anyone else with security. Why, her MS." Ellison's lips parted, but no words came. Karen's smirk there was gone, replaced by a nervous glance at the crowd, now silent. Their earlier amusement replaced by unease. Greg shifted on his feet, his country club swagger reduced to a fidget. The Tesla gleamed behind James, a silent testament to the power he wielded. But it was his words, his unwavering defense of Nia, that shifted the ground beneath them all. Nia felt a surge of pride, not for James's status, but for his heart, for the man who saw her worth when others refused. She looked at Zoe, whose eyes were wide, but trusting, and knew this fight was for her. For a world where her daughter wouldn't face this same scorn. The crowd waited, breathless, as James stood beside Nia, his presence a wall against their prejudice, the battle far from over. The air at Crestwood Elementary's pickup area hung heavy with the aftermath of James Carter's words, each syllable a stone cast into the still waters of the parents' complacency. Nia Carter stood beside him, her white t-shirt a quiet defiance against the polished crowd, her shoulder-length wavy hair framing a face that held both strength and sorrow. Zoe clung to her hand, the 6-year-old's eyes wide, but trusting a silent anchor in the storm. The silver Tesla gleamed in the fading light, but it was James's unyielding defense of his wife that had cracked the facade of Crestwood's exclusivity. Miss Ellison's clipboard trembled in her hands. Karen Mitchell's smirk had vanished, and Greg Larson's bravado was reduced to a nervous shuffle. The crowd, once eager spectators, now stood in uneasy silence, their complicity laid bare. From the edge of the gathering, an elderly woman stepped forward, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her understated navy dress radiating a quiet authority. Mrs. Eleanor. Mrs. Hayes, a longtime Crestwood parent, whose family name adorned a wing of the school's library, fixed her gaze on Miss Ellison. "Youngman," she said, addressing James, her voice carrying the weight of decades in Seattle's elite circles, "your wife is right. This school has lost its soul." She turned toward Nia, her eyes softening. "Mrs. Carter, I am deeply sorry for what you endured today. It shames me to witness it." The crowd stirred, whispers rippling like wind through dry leaves. Mrs. Hayes' words landed with the force of a verdict, striking at the polished reputation Crestwood had worked so hard to preserve. Parents shifted uneasily, glancing at one another, realizing that silence had bound them to complicity. Facing Miss Ellison again, her tone sharpened but remained calm, deliberate. "I have watched this place trade character for status, and today proves it. You've turned a school into a gated club, and I'm ashamed to be part of it." Her husband stooped in his tweed jacket, stepped beside her, nodding with quiet conviction. "We'll be withdrawing our grandchildren," he said, his voice low but final, each word carrying the weight of a hammer striking stone. The statement cracked through the air like thunder, shaking the crowd's certainty. A hush fell over the parents, half disbelief, half fear. If the Hayes family could walk away, what did that mean for everyone else? Sarah, the young teacher's aide who had spoken up earlier, took a trembling step forward. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with conviction. "I can't stay silent anymore," she said, her voice unsteady but unflinching. "I've seen parents profiled, singled out for their looks, their skin, their clothes. What happened to Mrs. Carter today isn't new, and I'm done pretending it's okay." With hands that did not waver, she unpinned her staff badge. For a moment, she held it in her palm, the weight of compromise pressing down one last time. "I quit." The badge clattered against Miss Ellison's clipboard, a small sound, yet it echoed like a gunshot through the still air. Miss Ellison's face drained of color, her authority crumbling in an instant. "Sarah, think about what you're doing," she pleaded, her voice cracking under the strain. "Your career, your future." "I am thinking," Sarah interrupted, her words cutting sharp. "Education should lift people up, not tear them down. I cannot be part of this anymore." She turned to Nia, guilt and resolve written across her face. "I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry." Nia's heart tightened, not with anger, but with gratitude for this unexpected act of courage. "Thank you for seeing me," she said softly, her voice steady. Despite the storm around her, her eyes moved to Mrs. Hayes, whose apology still lingered in the air like incense. "And thank you for speaking the truth." The crowd was silent. Some parents avoided Nia's gaze, their shame heavy. Others stared at her, as if seeing her for the first time, no longer able to dismiss her presence. Karen, who had spewed venom earlier, stood frozen, her confidence broken into fear. Greg muttered something under his breath, but The bravado that once cloaked him had evaporated. James tightened his arm around Zoe, his eyes locking with Nia's. A silent understanding passed between them. She gave the smallest nod, her resolve unshakable. "James," she said quietly, "let's go." This wasn't about winning an argument in a poisonous arena. This was about teaching Zoe, in the only way that mattered, that her worth could never be defined by prejudice. James reached for Zoe's other hand. Their daughter's curls bounced as she looked up, eyes wide, but calm, sensing the unity of her parents. Together, the three of them formed a solid line, a small but unbreakable wall of love moving through the sea of stairs. "Mr. Carter, please." Miss Ellison's voice rose, shrill with desperation. "Let's discuss this privately. We can review our policies. We can make this right." Her words were a lifeline thrown too late. James stopped just long enough to answer, his voice measured but sharp as glass. "The issue isn't your policies. It's your values. A school should teach children to see worth in everyone, not just those who fit your mold." He turned to Nia, his love for her burning quietly. Steady as a flame, "My wife deserves better. So does my daughter." The crowd parted without a word, leaving a path open. The Carters walked forward, each step deliberate. Each step, a refusal to bow. Nia felt the weight of the moment, not as triumph, but as reckoning. She had not come to Crestwood to fight, but faced with her prejudice, she had no choice but to stand tall. Today she had done it for Zoe, for herself, for every person dismissed in those pristine halls. Behind them, Sarah's voice broke the silence, breathless but strong. "Mrs. Carter." She hurried after them, her badge abandoned, her face alight with new purpose. "What happened today wasn't right. Thank you for standing up, not just for yourself, but for everyone who's been treated this way." Nia paused, exhaustion tugging at her, but gratitude shining through. "Thank you, Sarah. You stood up too." She looked at James, then back at Sarah, her voice warm but certain. "If you're looking for a place to make a difference, we know a community center that could use someone with your heart. Come with us." Sarah's eyes widened, hope sparking like dawn. She nodded without hesitation, falling into step beside them. As they reached the Tesla, behind them, the pickup zone stood as a fractured tableau. Miss Ellison clutching her clipboard like a shield, Karen staring at the ground, Greg isolated in his shame, and the Hayes family walking away in quiet rebellion. The sun dipped low, casting Crestwood in shadow. But for Nia, James, Zoe, and Sarah, the path ahead glowed with the promise of something better. A world where truth could bend even the hardest hearts toward justice. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation at Crestwood Elementary, yet its echoes lingered in the quiet hum of Nia Carter's home office. The late morning light streamed through the window, casting soft gold across stacks of papers spread across her desk. Proposals for a new environmental education program aimed at underserved schools in Seattle. Nia sat in a simple white t-shirt, her shoulder-length wavy hair tucked behind one ear, her fingers smudged with ink as she scribbled notes in the margins. The room had become her sanctuary, a space where her work to protect the planet intertwined with her fight to protect Zoe from a world too quick to judge. The memory of that day standing tall against prejudice, Zoe's hand clasped tightly in hers. James beside her still burned bright, not as a wound, but as a beacon. Outside, Seattle buzzed with its usual rhythm. But something had shifted. The Seattle Times had published a searing article with a headline that captured the city's attention: Crestwood's Culture of Exclusion, a call for change. At Nia's request, her name was omitted, but the story laid bare the discriminatory practices at the school. Sparked by the experience of one unnamed parent, it had ignited a citywide conversation with parents, educators, and activists demanding accountability. Nia leaned back, scanning a printout of the article, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. Crestwood had issued a public apology, whispers of reform, swirling new training, revised policies. Miss Allison had stepped down. Her departure. A silent admission of fault. Nia did not revel in it. She only hoped the school would learn to see beyond appearances. The door creaked open. James entered, balancing 2 steaming mugs of coffee. His fair features softened as he set one beside her, careful not to disturb her papers. Sarah's program got the green light, he said, his voice warm with admiration. The board loved her pitch for inclusive teacher training. Full funding. Nia's lips curved into a smile, her pen pausing mid-sentence. She has a gift, she said, meeting his eyes. She sees potential where others only see barriers. James grinned. Sound familiar? Her teasing tone masked a deeper truth. James had always seen her, truly seen her. Even when the world refused to, he leaned against the desk, a steady presence in the whirlwind of change. The article was not the only ripple. Social media had erupted with stories from other parents, Black, Latino, working class, sharing their own encounters with Crestwood's gatekeeping. Nia scrolled through their words late at night, sometimes with tears, sometimes with a fierce kinship. She hadn't sought this fight, but it had found her. And now, it was reshaping the city's elite spaces, one truth at a time. That evening, laughter filled a modest community center in a neighborhood far from Crestwood's manicured lawns. It was Zoe's 7th birthday, and the room pulsed with life. Children darted between tables, their joy untamed. Parents of every background shared plates of homemade food, voices rising in an easy chorus of celebration. A handmade banner stretched across the wall. Happy birthday, Zoe. Glitter caught the light, sparkling as brightly as the girl herself. Nia, dressed simply, moved through the crowd, her hair loose, her smile radiant, as she hugged an old friend from her Atlanta days. James, tireless and relaxed, helped Zoe lean over her cake, their daughter's curls bouncing as she giggled before blowing out the candles. The center's walls bore stories: pay what you can cooking classes for children, job training programs for those rebuilding lives, shelves of donated books and art supplies. This was everything Crestwood was not, a place where worth was measured by heart, not by status. Sarah approached, her eyes wide with awe. Mrs. Carter, she said, her voice bright. This place is incredible. She had joined the center staff just weeks before, her resignation from Crestwood becoming a bridge to something better. Nia pulled her into a hug. You're part of it now, she said. The founder of the center, a former chef who had left a high-end restaurant to build this haven, joined them. He spoke of families transformed, of children discovering confidence, of parents rediscovering hope. James listened quietly, then later slipped a check into the founder's hand, not for recognition, but to fuel the work. To him, generosity was never about show. It was about making sure spaces like this could thrive. As the party wound down, Nia and James stepped outside into the cool night. Zoe slept in James's arms, her paper crown tilted, her chest rising and falling with gentle rhythm. The city hummed in the distance, but above them the stars stretched endless, a canopy of quiet promise. Nia slipped her hand into James's. Her voice was soft, but certain. That day at Crestwood, she said, it wasn't just about us. It was about showing Zoe she is enough, exactly as she is. Her words carried the weight of their journey, from confrontation to renewal, from judgment to justice. James squeezed her hand, his eyes warm. You show her that every single day, and you show me what courage looks like. He glanced down at Zoe, nestled safely in his arms. She's going to change the world just like her mom. Behind them, unnoticed, a small line appeared in Crestwood's latest newsletter. Tucked between routine announcements, just 5 words. All families are welcome here. Some changes roared, like the clash in the pickup line. Others whispered, like a quiet decision to see people anew. But all of it began with the truth Nia had lived that day. That worth shines brightest not in surface appearances, but in hearts that dare to stand, to love, and to build a world where every child, every Zoe can belong